Hey, this is Chovi'hanos Nick, and I'm using this video to kind of I guess, explain and describe what Chovi'hanos is, and why I call myself that, as well as talk about the reasons why I am making content on Substack and Patreon. So, in Gypsy culture, they were tribal, and they essentially, they left India as one of the tribes there, and people don't know why this happened, but for some reason they found themselves migrating. Some, I guess, historians believe that they were enslaved up until I think 1000 AD, or between 950 to I'd say 1150 AD. And at some point during that time, they kind of forgot their origins in India and essentially had no place to go. So they started migrating as a a tribal and nomadic society. They had chiefs and different people in those tribes with specific, I guess, roles to play. And one of the things is that they learned was to acquire professions and skills that aren't essentially you can use anywhere, so that they can always find work. And these range from metalworking to construction, and I think more recently it'd be asphalt construction, which is what I do, and what they call dukkering. And dukkering essentially is divining, reading cards, palm reading, uh, knowing the mysteries, that sort of thing. And I guess a lot of times this is kind of where the stereotypes come in. You always see that stereotype of the mysterious gypsy woman offering to divine your future in your palm or read from a crystal ball. And in part, in order to find work, you kind of have to raise the theatrics a little bit to get attention from people. And it worked. And it was a way to survive. Well, within tribal communities, they had Jobarnis, Chuvanas, Chovihanos, and they essentially serve to, I guess, oversee, magical ritual within the tribe. And I guess to mediate with the spirits, to offer practical magic and charms things. A lot of gypsy magic was surrounded, I guess, by practical life. To them, it was a means of survival and a way to interpret the magical in their life. Because I mean, even now, my own family, they have, I guess, within the past few generations, I guess, put all that stuff behind them in favor of Christianity. And a lot of that stuff they say is devilish now. But I still, being raised, we still have that inherent magical belief system. And we believe in, omens, interpreting dreams and how dreams can, foretell what's going to happen. Or if, the spirits of loved ones are trying to tell you a message. And to basically, be careful with what you speak and what you say, because words have inherent meaning. You don't want to speak constantly negative about yourself or a situation, because that's considered bad luck. Instead, you would build yourself up, say much positive things, because in essence, you're sending a message to divine about what you want to happen. So, I call myself a Chovi'hano, which isn't used often in at least my community, and probably other communities either, because we've lost a lot of our culture. But for me, it's a way to, I guess, honor my ancestors, honor my heritage, to reclaim a word that isn't used anymore, and to, I guess, honor myself and my path. Because ever since I was small, I had interest in witchcraft, magic, and the occult. And That's just a part of who I am, just as anything else is part of me. And I stumbled across this word, this name for these traditions and what they are through Raymond Buckland and a Chovi'hano named Jasper Lee. And to me, that was like, it clicked as a title. And essentially, they are the medicine men and mystics of the Gypsy tribes. And I guess women, or I guess more often than not, the practitioners. Men could be, but it's most often the women. And to me, that doesn't really bother me much being a gay man, so whatever. But they also went by the name Jabarni, which I mentioned earlier, which it connects to poison and medicine. Essentially, literally, it means like a worker of poison. And Drabarno is usually like the male equivalent, which is pretty much connected to what witches are considered today, like old workers of medicine and magic and what's the word, like poisons and so on. But I prefer Choviano, and in a way, it's like mediating the spirit world with the mundane world, like the spirits of what are around us, our ancestors, and using these unseen forces to craft charms and bags and spells that, I don't know, make life and the struggles we go through, as a race or as people in these times, easier. And it means a lot to me. But I don't know, it's my journey, and it's something I'm happy about. So I hope I get to describe more about Chovihanos in the future and how that can manifest itself in the present day. And I feel like it's very a small niche, very specific niche that has been claimed by a few famous practitioners. But other than that, it's not very well known because in Europe, people know what gypsies and rumdies are, but in the U.S., it's mostly, you know, an idea or like a fantasy figure. The gypsies in the United States aren't as open in fear of prosecution. But even from my own studies, from what I've seen, the Chovihanos and the, I guess, gypsy witches of the past, they had like their practices are related to folk magic, and somehow it's very related to voodoo. Like I was reading what they used to do, and it seemed very similar to voodoo practices, and how very, I guess, practical magic that you can use with about anything. And they used what they learned along their treks from all these different countries in, I guess, mystic practices from ancient India, the Middle East, and everywhere else they've been, combined with their savvy nature and the plants and items that they came across in their travels. And it was, I guess, inherent wisdom that they passed down to each different generation. Because primarily the Gypsy people, they do not, they didn't write much. Everything was very oral tradition. Even now that affects us because our language, we don't have exact like dictionary until recently. So a lot of people know what words sound like, but the spelling might be different because there's no clear specific spelling. And to compound that with something else is that you got all these different tribes and all these different countries, and it affects how they speak and what words they use. So everything will have the same root word, but will sound slightly different from group to group because there was no foundational written context to this language. And to me, that's fascinating because I have met other gypsies, and we will have different words for things, but we can understand enough where we can communicate, even if a word sounds slightly different. And even my own heritage goes back to England, and after so many years, the English Gypsies they say certain things and spell certain things differently than me, and have different ideas of what things mean. But I still know what they mean, and they still know what I mean, and I think that's pretty cool. It's something to be proud of. Um, as I'm gonna get into right now, Chovihanos, but essentially it's a really awesome practice, and it's very much like voodoo, venerating ancestors, uh, creating charm bags, performing spells and magic, being like medicine people and common folk, and it's making sense of the mysteries that I'm sure that they encountered time and time again out in the wild, especially from all the stories I've heard of my uncles, my aunts, and people interacting with what they call the bang or the devil or the imp, and to explain why they can see things that other people can't see. For example, I can see spirits. I can feel them and hear them sometimes. And so did my great grandmother and my mother. And these little stories, these little ideas, these contexts that are inherently magical by nature, we don't, I never really realized that because it was normal for us until I interacted with non gypsies or Gaugers. But I guess that's a story for another time. Anyways, thanks for listening and listen to me speak about this. Thank you. Have a good night. Maybe I'll write an article on this too.